All right, looks like we might be a little light today, but we're going to forge ahead anyway. Look through I'm trying to decide the second half of class. I actually have a video that I recorded during a class last semester that's the same stuff that we're going to go over today, but I'm trying to decide whether to post that or just go through. I think some of it might have changed, so we'll go through it and maybe I'll still post it. I don't know. We'll see. But let's take a look at the um, assignments first. Well, I totally lost track of what word I was looking for there. Let's see. Where's my? Oh, there it is. Couldn't find my button to share the screen. And okay, well, I don't have Bridge open, so let me do that. All right, now I got it. All right, so we're going to look at everything, including the people who aren't here. And the assignments that were a little bit light this week as well. We're down, 4 or 5 people that we did not get assignments from, but and that's probably why they're not here. It always seems to work out that way. When you don't turn in an assignment, they don't show up for class. So, but we'll look at them anyway. So Amelia, you're up first. So we've got your before and after, which we'll just kind of take a look there. Other than the adjustments that you made, let's just take a look at the final. There's a couple of these that I kind of need some help with. So I'm not quite sure what I'm looking at here. I think I know, but I mean, obviously there's a bottle of pills on the right-hand side, but I'm not quite sure what I've got on the left here. So help me out a little bit.
It was intended to be kind of like a jester's mask.
Oh, okay.
So,
So,
the idea that I had was like, because the bottle on the left, that's my anxiety medication.
gotcha.
So, I kind of went for the somebody with a super happy appearing disposition or like job isn't that way on the inside, you know?
Or that's what it takes to make them that way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the feeling that I got. I just wasn't sure like what it is on the left, like that you use to create that mask. I'm not, I think I
Cardboard.
probably, okay, I was gonna say I probably spent more time trying to figure that out than anything else because I couldn't tell if it was like the mustache part of that is, the fact that it spans those
I actually
two
have it.
pieces.
If you'd want to see it, like in person.
So it's yeah, I mean it's a physical thing, right? It's not like the black parts of it almost looked to me like they were drawn on. That's why I was confused. Oh, okay. So now I got it.
Yeah.
So it's funny because it looks in this picture it represents as like two torn pieces of cardboard on the bottom. You know what I mean? And like the rest of it just looks like the table. So that's why I was confused. Now I'm seeing edges a little bit more than what I
Okay.
did originally. Like in the center on the upper part, I can see the edge now.
Mm.
All right, it was a little confusing to me what it was, but now seeing it, it makes a little bit more sense. So yeah,
Gotcha.
so a play on happy versus sad, or the way you described it. There's a couple of ways to probably describe this. But all of them are pretty similar to what you said. So I got it. It just was, like I said, was confusing me a little bit. I think probably also the distance from your camera to the subjects,
Yeah.
because they're inside probably the minimum focal or focusing distance that your camera has. both the bottom of the mask and the top of the pill bottle are just a little out of focus. And so I wasn't sure if that had something, if that was intentional, if it was part of the design, part of what you were, it's funny because when I look at this as a thumbnail to the left here, it actually stands out and makes way more sense to me than looking at it as a large image. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can kind of see that too.
Yeah, I think sometimes making it that big just sort of it amplifies things that the questions. But I definitely in the thumbnail can definitely see that delineation of the mask a whole lot better.
Yeah.
All right, so it makes sense. And again, like I said, that's the thought process that I had. It was the idea that I kind of picked up on. I just wasn't quite sure what I was looking at on the left hand side. But I do think it's there. I'm just not sure why. It's funny when I look at that thumbnail, I get it immediately, but when I look at the larger image, it confuses me, and I'm not sure why. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I do apologize because I didn't even realize that the top of the mask would blend in with the background so much.
yeah, and it's funny. Like I said, again, looking at the thumbnail, it really kind of doesn't. Like I really do see it there. I can see a whole lot more separation between it and the table than any or floor, whatever that is, than I do in the bigger one. So that's just a perception thing, I think, more than anything else. So I wouldn't worry about that. I think I'm trying to think of some comment that I can give you that would have helped that a little bit. I think I really can't think of anything because lighting wise, I can see it's not flat like if the light was directly overhead, I wouldn't see the sides of that mask outlined the way they are. So it's not a lighting thing. I don't know. I'm a little stumped on this one, but at least the idea came across. And sometimes I think when you're dealing with art, maybe it's a good idea to make people question. If you can get them to think along the lines you want them to, you don't necessarily have to, every little detail doesn't have to necessarily be explained because the
Yeah.
idea is to just get them to think. And
Yeah.
whether it's what you want them to think or not, if they think at all, you've done your job. So, all right. So good idea. Anyway, like I said, it's funny. I was a little stumped. I wish maybe halfway through class, I'm going to go, oh, wait, you know what? You know what would make that a whole lot better? And I'll come back and tell you about it. But right now it's just not coming to me. But the idea behind it was good. I like that.
Cool.
All right. So let me move to Abby. And Abby, as soon as I saw the email come in that you had posted it, my first thought was, okay, a rat and what? Like, what were you going to put with a rat? But I actually like this kind of way better. So there's three versions of this, and you titled them. So tell me why this is Indiana Jones. Is this because like snatching the item at the beginning of the first movie? He's like
That's
picking
exactly
it
it.
up.
Like how he steals stuff and puts it in a museum.
Yeah, right. So you're pulling the phone out. So let me just go through these first because there's just three variations of them. Yeah. So the first one says Indiana Jones. Second one is it belongs in a museum, and the third one, just give me the phone. So what I really like about this third one is that because her hand and the phone have motion to them, it literally looks like you're trying to pull it out of her hand.
That's exactly what I thought.
So now technically the only criticism that I'll give on all of these is, and it may be tough. It may have been tough for you technically with whatever you were working with camera wise, lens wise, and distance wise. But this type of effect is a lot more pronounced if your hand is also in focus.
Yeah, I kept trying for that and it wouldn't focus on
Yeah,
my
so it's not something that you can physically do yourself. You actually need to, so it's all about that 3-point relationship in distance. So your background would be this person there. Then your hand would be, say, here, and then at least the same distance back would be somebody with the camera. But if you're trying to do that yourself, you're not going to be able to get far enough away in order for that to happen. But the idea still came through. Um, it worked. The whole concept, was pretty easy to figure out. And as much as I like the first one, because of the placement being good, I keep going back to this one just simply because of that motion in the hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're really trying to pull that out of her, because she's sharp. Everything about her is sharp and in focus, and no motion or anything. It's just the hand that's moving. So
Mm-hmm.
again, I know you guys are limited in what you can work with as far as cement block walls, things like that.
Yeah.
So artistically, as as an art piece, this isn't going to win any prizes, but the humor definitely
That's
is
okay.
there. And I like the fact that it's a 3-panel progression, and the titles,
Thank you.
tying in and all of that. So good thoughts, put into this.
Mhm.
I just wanted to give you an idea or two about how to improve that if you do something like that in the future. And it's really all about that distance. Somebody
Yeah.
has to be a little further back, and it's really tough to get that because everything has to work out perfectly in order for not only for your hand to be in focus, but to still have that distance,
Mhm.
sort of like, and again, it comes down to the sizes of the objects. So, you can do this with the sun and make it look the same way just because the sun,
Yeah.
is so far away. But it is hard to do it yourself because it's hard to get far enough away. But
Mhm.
yeah, I like the idea. So thanks for
Thanks.
that. All right. So we're going to go to Chris. So I like this. I do have a question in a minute on it. As far as there's something I'm seeing here that I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, but obviously, the odd man out, the Pepsi in the middle of the Coke cans. I like the really shallow depth of field on this. The cans they're not tack sharp. The one on the right and the one on, well, mostly the one on the right has a little bit of softness on the edge, but it's not enough to be a distraction. And color comes into play here a good bit too, because it's not just a difference in the can, but a difference in the colors as well. So what I see on here that I'm not sure if you did it intentionally, I'm curious as to why you made the choices you did. But the 2 Coke cans on the left are lined up pretty much identical to each other, and the 2 Coke cans on the right are identical to each other on the right, but they're different on the right and on the left. And I'm wondering if that's something you did intentionally for some reason, or if you just sort of laid them in there and that's what you came up with.
I thought it kind of looked better when all the original tastes were lined up, not so much like the Coke. I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, it almost felt to me like the cans were looking inward. You know what I mean? Like the ones on the right are turned into the center.
They
The
are.
one,
They are.
yeah.
The ones on the right are like, it's kind of like I wouldn't say a C, but it's like they're slightly like the Pepsi's further back.
Mm-hmm. So you were looking more at the original taste than the Coca-Cola logo. Got it. Yeah, and I don't know if it would have been more or less effective the other way. Would it have made a huge difference? No, because I mean, again, it's all about in a shot like this, it's all about that initial impact. And as soon as I saw it, I got it. It's pretty hard to miss the whole idea here of sticking that Pepsi can in there. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud of anything that I might have tried differently. It's a really simple shot, so not a whole lot you could do. Maybe, I don't know, maybe cover a little more of the Pepsi can with the Coke can so that it's like squeezing, trying to squeeze through and make a space for itself. I don't know, just little things, but overall, I'm not gonna complain because this is a pretty easy concept to figure out when you see it. So I liked it a lot. I thought it was done pretty well. All right, let's move on. So, Ashton, so we've got, so normally juxtaposition is playing two or more objects against each other, um, if there were some, of course, I guess the sky in the background kind of looks like a bit of an apple pie. I don't know. It's just more a little bit of humor. And I've seen this. I've been to this spot before. I never noticed the sign. You didn't go up and move that sign, I hope.
No.
Because I've not noticed. I've done some deliveries out in this area, but I don't know that there's probably more than one sign, obviously, for Apple Pie Ridge Road, but I haven't noticed it being upside down. I love the time of day that you shot this. Again, so the idea was to shoot something, I don't want to say it, that, satisfied the assignment, but still make it visually interesting. And obviously the sunset or sunrise, whichever that is, does it. Is it a sunrise or a sunset?
It's a sunset.
Sunset.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it makes sense. The deeper blue at the top of that coming down, you probably don't see too much of that in the mornings, but I don't know if is there anything that I can suggest an improvement on? Not a ton. I mean, obviously the vehicle in the background that's cut in half by that pole, I'd rather not be there. But I also realized that if you changed your angle of view to get that car out of there, then you're going to lose your sunset. So, maybe, I don't know, going the other way, you might introduce more stuff on the left that you didn't want to see too. So, and of course, power lines are always, problematic. I wish everything was underground. I hate power lines. I hate telephone poles, especially in things that I have to shoot and then I have to go in and remove them because they're such a pain. But anyway, I'm not sure. I like the play of the warm background and the cool foreground. Minor little things that honestly I don't know you could have done anything about. So I'm not sure I can offer you any suggestions here, but you did do it at the right time of day. I'll give you that. Always nice to have something a little more interesting. Have you gone in the middle of the day and shot this? It would have just been, well, there's an upside down road sign. Woohoo, big deal, right? But I also like the fact that the arrow on the sign is pointing to the sunset. So, just little things. Again, not a whole lot I can offer you here. Because I haven't, had I been there, I might have said, oh, stand over here or move this, but I don't know what the rest of the scene holds, so I really can't do that. But nice job finding, something a little strange like that. It's just funny. I haven't seen that like that. All right, James. So I'm guessing this might have been Saturday.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So tell me, I mean, obviously we've got everybody kind of doing their own thing for the most part. We do have a couple of you that are, in the same kind of t-shirt. But again, so juxtaposition, playing two or more things against each other for an idea or an effect that don't normally belong together. So we've got a police officer on one side. We've got I'm not even sure what all the characters are exactly, but they are unique and different. It's obviously a low light shot. I kind of like the fact that it's done some funky things to the lighting. I can see, a lot of noise in the image because of the low light, but you still were able to maintain a reasonably sharp image. And I like the inclusion of of that string light at the top. As I look at it, if I crop that out with my hand, I don't like it as well. I kind of think that that's an interesting touch up there to again play those, even though they're both warm colors, to play them off of each other and to show a little more unusual. It's funny that the dude in the back does not look happy. He's just like, all right, whatever, just take the picture and I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And I didn't see. I do see the glasses now, but I can't really see.
Yeah, I had to. I went into Photoshop and had to do a shake reduction when pretty much like the left side of the photo from like the guy that looks like he doesn't want to be there over, because my camera was just not, like, my shutter speed was ungodly low.
Yeah, I didn't look at it, but I would imagine. Yeah, it says it's 8/10 of a second, I believe. So your ISO was only at 400. You could have probably gotten a faster shutter speed by bumping that up. I'm actually surprised it's only 400 because of the amount of noise in the image. That's kind of unusual to have that much noise, but it may have been, the shot might have been a little underexposed. And when you bring up an underexposed shot that's done in low light, it does increase the noise. So that might have been what caused that. But yeah, I probably would have gone, I probably would have doubled or even tripled the ISO, gone to maybe 1600 if your camera goes that high. That would have taken your shutter speed 2 steps faster, might have been a little easier. To hand hold. But I do see it. I see, in the shirt here on the left, a little bit of a ghosting image, but it's minor. So I wouldn't have picked up too much on. There's a little bit of motion in the money. But again, that's not a problem. It just kind of is what it is. But you would have gotten a little faster shutter speed with a little higher ISO. That's all. You guys didn't go knock on doors, did you?
No.
It was funny. We kind of raced to get home here. We were out in the afternoon and raced to get home, not knowing if anybody would even show up because they canceled. I don't know if you knew this. They canceled Halloween that morning, Saturday morning. They actually canceled it because of the COVID numbers. The day before, Ohio County had been moved from green, I guess, to orange or something, or from yellow to orange or whatever. And so they canceled all Halloween activities, but we still had a few people show up. I will, however, be eating Kit Kats and Three Musketeers bars for the next 6 months. So if anybody wants some candy, let me know. I'll mail it to you. All right, so let's move down to, okay, so this one, Alana, I really kind of got a kick out of these. So, yeah, obviously a big change from the originals to the finished ones, but we're going to look at the finished ones. Again, it's a concept that I've seen done with different items a number of different ways. I think the one on the left, you really sell it with the expression. It's like, what the hell is this? I've seen these types of things actually happen. I've seen, I've got an old rotary dial telephone here that I had when I was growing up. It's actually on a shelf up here just as a conversation piece. But my niece, when we were cleaning out my parents' house after they passed away, there was a rotary phone hanging on the wall, and she literally had no idea what it was. She was like, what is this? And, we said, well, it's a phone. And she was trying to figure out how you launch the apps. But yeah, I've seen a couple of things. And then on the right, I like the fact that you've got, the plug, the headphone plug. You're trying to figure out where to plug that in. But I've seen people do this with, literally, I've seen them do it with a cassette tape. Somebody on Facebook gave a cassette tape to people who were actually a good bit younger than you.
Yeah.
And told them that it was an audio product, and they were trying to figure out, they were trying all sorts of different ways to make this thing, holding it up to the light, whatever. It was just funny to watch because they'd never seen one before. So yeah, I like the idea. I especially like the expressions. I think it sells it pretty well. And then the juxtaposition again between the old and the new. I did get rid of all my cassette tapes, so I'm not that bad. I do have a lot of albums left though. I don't think I'll ever get rid of those. I actually just, I'm getting ready to sell a bunch of stuff. And I have these speakers that I bought literally in, I want to say the late 80s. And they're tall. They're probably 5 feet tall, but they're really thin. They're about this thin. And there's a subwoofer that goes with them, and then the receiver. and the speaker and the subwoofer had kind of deteriorated over the years. So I bought a new replacement speaker and put it in and hooked it all up over the weekend. And I'm like, it sounds so good. I'm not selling it. Like it literally, I've got a Bose surround system on my home theater, and these speakers actually sound better than that system does. So now I'm like, hey, I'm not selling it. I'll use it to play my albums through. But anyway, I like it. Do you have a favorite between the two here? I like them both.
I like the black and white one.
Yeah, I probably would have picked that just simply because it is black and white, and I think your expression is even a little more, sells it even a little bit more there. So, good job on that, and pretty good recovery too on what you had here to work with. I didn't look at your metadata, but yeah, 40th of a second. It's a little underexposed, but you did a pretty good job of bringing that back, and so the editing was done really well.
Thank you.
So finally, we've got this one by Eva, who's not here today, and I really wish she was because I am I'm not sure. So I know obviously I'm looking at a tray of cookies. That much I can figure out. The one in the center seems to be a little different than the rest, so I'm not sure if that's playing into all the effect that she has here. I'm just not. I wish she was here to explain it to me. I think I want to tell her that the mushrooms were probably not good. Like she shouldn't have eaten those mushrooms. This looks a little bit like a bad LSD trip. I don't know. I just don't have the like as far as the effect that she applied. I don't have enough information to know what she did and why. I do see. So this would be a good example of an image that could really benefit from having a title, because it would give a little bit of a clue as to what the person who sorry, I want to make a change here before I forget what their thought process was, and kind of let us in on that a little bit. It would help a little bit, but it's interesting. I mean, it's cool to look at, but I'm just not sure of what her intent was, other than the fact that we do have this cookie in the center that's a little bit. Actually, that's the one that looks correct. The rest of them all sort of look a little misshapen and stuff. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that's what she was going for. Maybe she'll explain it to us a little bit next week. All right. So let's take a look at the submissions here. Let me make these a little bigger. And let me get you guys to where I can see all of you. And let's just take a little quick vote and see who likes what. So 3 of you, yeah, there we go. I was going to say, get your cameras working here so I can see your who you're voting for. Haley, we still need to see if she's still there. Okay, maybe not. Maybe she took off. Oh, there we go. All right. Thank you. All right. So let's, who likes the Apple Pie Ridge Road at the top? All right. Coke and Pepsi. Chris, you're not going to vote for your own picture? Okay. The Halloween shot. Okay. The Mask. Got it. The Indiana Jones. All right. The Old and New. Gotcha. And the cookies. So our winner is the Mask. So Amelia, you might have confused me a little bit, but you didn't confuse anybody else. They and again, the concept is a good one. The concept was pretty good on all of these. Like I said, I'm a little confused by Eva's, but I'm sure if she were here, she'd probably clear that up really easily for me. But your idea and the concept there was pretty spot on. So as far as the assignment's concerned, So let me get a point in there for you. And I'm also going to throw one at, I think I'm going to throw one at Alana because I really, I think you nailed the idea too. Plus, I like the whole expression thing going on there. So good job there. All right, guys, we're good there. All right, let me get out of this. Well, actually, no, I'm going to stay in this because we're going to move into a little different area here. I'm just moving my windows around so I can see my screen and everybody else as well. All right. So a few weeks back, we looked at black and whites, converting black and whites, maintaining detail in black and whites, that kind of thing. So what we're going to look at this week and what the assignment will be based on next week is actually using color as a subject. There are a number of ways to do that. I'm going to show you some examples and what they represent. There are three basic categories that we're going to put them in. One is color harmony, one is color contrast, and then the third one would be monochromatic color, meaning that we're basically working with a single color here. And just looking, for example, at the submissions, so like James, your image here would fall under the category of being a monochromatic color because it has this overall look to it, this overall orange cast that kind of becomes the image. I think that's the only one up here that probably would fit that bill. But let's look at some examples here. First of all, I'm going to show you a little bit about this color wheel. And now that I've done this, all of my images are out of order. So when you're dealing with light, there are three primary colors of light, as there are three primary colors of pigment. However, they're different. The primary colors of light are red, green, and blue. And if you follow this thought process through, you realize that when you're dealing with a digital image, it's actually called an RGB image, meaning red, green, and blue. And each color image that we view on a computer, on a phone, or whatever, is an image that is composed of three monochromatic color channels: a red, a green, and a blue. And where they mesh together, you get white light. So this sort of illustrates that. So these three circles represent the primary colors, and where all three overlap in the center, you get white light. So if you have three light sources that are equal in intensity, one being red, one being green, and one being blue, the effect is that where they overlap, you're going to have normal white light. Now, where only two of them are in effect, for example, if you mix green and blue, you come up with cyan. That is how the color cyan is produced. It's a mixture of green and blue. Magenta is produced as a mixture of red and blue, and yellow is a combination of red and green. So you kind of get an idea for how these things work. So it's an interesting, and we actually play with this a little bit in the advanced class by doing a photograph of an object that uses three light sources. And I think the last time I did this, we just used a flash, each one with a colored gel over it, a red gel, a green gel, and a blue gel, obviously. And we separate the flashes by a little bit, maybe, I don't know, 6, 8 inches, 10 inches, whatever. And so what happens is if you put a subject, let's say you put a person or an object or whatever up against a white wall, and you photograph them using those three colors of light, they will represent as if they were shot with a single light that was white. But the shadows that it throws on the wall behind them, they'll be offset because the light sources are offset. They're, like I said, 6, 8, 10 inches apart. And so the shadows, it will actually create a series of shadows on the wall that are yellow, magenta, and cyan. because of the fact that the light sources are different. There are parts of that wall that are only being exposed by the green and the blue. Some are only exposed by the green and the red, and others by the red and the blue. So it's a pretty cool effect. I remember doing that years and years ago on film. I think I had my subject had like a 44 caliber handgun with a scope mounted on the top of it, and he was up against a white seamless wall. And we shot this with the 3 colors, and it created this really cool shadow pattern on the wall with those 3 complementary colors. But he was lit normally, and everybody was like, "How did you do that?" Like, because there was no Photoshop then. It was just, you had to create those things using light. And that's how it's done. So it's good to know those things. It's good to understand how your images are created, digital images are created, and it's just that mixture of red, green, and blue that does it. So looking at a different kind of a color wheel, this one shows the images that shows the colors in a little bit of a different fashion. So for example, if you go directly across from an image, you're going to get its complementary color. So if you look at blue and you go directly across, yellow is the complementary color of blue, and so or the contrasting color. So what happens is if you do an image that plays those 2 colors against each other, they're going to stand out. Whatever the subject, if the subject's blue and the background is yellow, obviously that subject is going to stand out a great deal. It creates a great amount of contrast. But because they're actual opposites, it works. Psychologically, the colors work well together. So red and cyan, magenta and green, or any of the little in betweens as you look here, those opposites are good to work with. And designers use information like this, again, a little bit of a different fashion because they're working with pigments, but they work with a color wheel to let them know which colors are going to work in a design with other colors. So if they're designing a color palette for a room, for example, or a building or whatever, it helps make sense. And same thing with designers who are working in print media. If any of you are doing taking any classes like that, I'm sure you've dealt with the color wheel and how to mix and match colors that work in the same palette together. So adjacent colors or closer together. So these, like your greens, these are, anything that lumps these together is going to be a little more harmonious than something going across. Then the reds, same thing, and the blues, anything like that. You can mix and match shades of those for a little more of a monochromatic look that's a little more harmonious. So let's look at some actual images. These are going to be completely out of order. I'm not sure why, but for some reason they switched out of order. So this is up at Oglebay, the amphitheater there. They a few years ago they repainted all of those bleachers, and they kind of had this rust color to them. So the subject that's sitting here is dressed in a similar color. So we have it's a cross between monochromatic and color harmony, because the skin tone is a different color, but the effect is that it makes the skin tone stand out because it's the only color in this image that's not like all the rest. So you kind of take that out of the mix. So for example, when I am shooting families, and there's probably a couple of examples in here we'll look at, as far as clothing, when it comes to clothing, I work with clothing with that in mind. So if I have a family that comes in and they're all dressed in white, for example, or maybe just blue jeans and white shirts or whatever, I'm typically going to photograph them on a white background, because the white in the background and the white in the clothing sort of cancel each other out. They're very similar like they are here. And then that makes the skin tone stand out. It makes you look at the faces. It makes you look at the skin tones. It makes them pop out more. So conversely, if somebody comes in and the family's all dressed like in black tops, then I'm going to put them on a black background, because now the area of greatest contrast is still the faces and the skin. if you squint at an image like that, you can easily see the faces pop out. You have to be careful when you're shooting black on black that you don't bleed into the background. You have to light it so that there's, you know, edge delineation along the edges of the people, sort of like there is here, using the sun in this case to rim light him to give a little bit of separation. Because if you look in the areas where it's not present, you know, on the right side of the image, his left side, he starts to bleed in just a little bit, and that's even worse in a studio environment. So this is another example, sort of the same thing, and there is some edge lighting on both the back right and the back left, so that she pops out, and the background is lit separately as well. It's actually a black background that's just lit with a color gel. So I can change that background color just by putting a gel on the light to anything that I want. Literally, when somebody comes out of the dressing room, I have a swatch of colors in you know, the small pieces of gel material, and I just match up what they're wearing to a gel color, put that gel on the light, and then I get a background that's exactly the same color or very close to what they're wearing. But again, the effect is the same here. If you squint at this image, what you see is her skin tone, because it's much lighter. It's the area of greatest contrast in this image. We've sort of taken the background and the clothing and blended them enough that we made her pop out. So this is the same background, just with a green gel on it. Obviously, since she's wearing black, I could have used any color, but because she has red hair, and remember, reds and greens are kind of opposites, I wanted the red hair to really stand out, and that's why we went with a green background, and it really does. But it's actually not only the same background, it's actually even hung the same way. It looks different, and that's just simply because the camera's tilted one way in one image and it's tilted the other way in another to give a little bit of motion to it. But same basic idea. So this one's kind of interesting. Again, this is all done intentionally. If you look at the background, we've got this white wall, and then we've got part of it that's painted red, and the person wearing red is in front of the white part of the wall, and the person wearing white is in front of the red part of the wall. So that's obviously, you know, if you can envision this the other way, they're not going to stand out as much that way. So we're always looking for ways to make the subject pop and stand out as much as possible, and color in this case was an easy way to do that. So this one's not mine. This was one that I found, but I love it. These, you know, I'm not sure what the liquid is that's being shot in here, but they're you know, the blue and the yellow. Again, remember on the color wheel, blues and yellows are opposite each other. So color-wise, it works really well. The background is neutral, so both of them are going to stand out. Not sure exactly why a basketball was used here. There is some geometry going on there. Maybe the roundness of the basketball helped the splash, helped them get the splash they wanted. There's actually a whole series. I don't have them readily available that I can pull up, but I have a series of images that somebody did that are similar to this that are really cool. They were shot with models who were doused with milk, and there were probably dozens of exposures, each one with milk being thrown at the model and creating these splashes, and they actually created clothing out of the milk. It's a really cool effect. I wish I had thought to bring those into this folder and I could have shown them to you. I'm not really sure where they're at, but it's a really similar effect to this, but very painstakingly done. This requires an extremely, not just a fast shutter speed. This requires very high speed, high powered lights, because the shutter alone is not going to be fast enough to freeze those droplets the way they're frozen here. You need, you know, this is shot in very low light, if not darkness, and the duration of the flash is actually way faster than the shutter speed is, and that's what causes these droplets to do this. I'll have to see if I can find those really kind of cool shots. I'll show them to you if I can find them. Anyway, we'll move on. So this is an example of monochromatic color. So there's really only, this is a color image, It is an RGB image, but because of the fact that it's photographed with a gelled light, and actually a gelled light that has a pattern to it, everything in the image appears green. It's not really, if you look, you can see that her lips are red. You can see a slight bit of color in some other areas, but for the most part, this looks very monochromatic because of the light source. And it's a very striking thing. It's a very, it's not just the way it was done. I love the pattern that's created here because it creates these diagonals. I like the fact that the camera's turned to the point where those lines are not straight up and down. They do come in at a diagonal, so that's kind of cool. I'm just doing three things at once here. I'm trying to find those other images. But this is definitely, so the one before is color contrast because, again, we're working with opposite sides of the color wheel. This one is monochromatic color because we're basically working with just one shade here. All right, let me see if I can find them with a quick search. Moving down, so this is a little more subtle use of it. This is the Hampton Inn out on National Road, but it's playing the warm colors against cool colors in the background. So the foreground, the building, the foreground, the fire, even the furniture here is all sort of on the warm side, and then we've got the coolness of the background. This was intentionally, we waited until we got just the right tonality in the background. We didn't want the sky to be overpowering, but I wanted enough detail back there to bring that color out to be able to play the warms against the cools. All right, I think I found those. I'll keep working on that. Same kind of an idea here. So we're playing warm against cool. The theater is completely lit, or underlit actually, with this very warm light. It's bathed in this warm light, and then the lighting on the stage is very, very cool. And it's kind of cool that it plays in the reflections throughout the theater too. Here on the balcony, railings left and right, the little wooden pieces going down out of the upper tier get a little reflection off of that, so that those cool tones are bounced around. You can actually even see them on their that cool tones are rim lighting the heads of the people in the foreground. So it's kind of a lot of that color splashed throughout, but it really is color that makes this stand out probably more than anything else. Let me see if I can move these while we're talking here. All right, so we already looked at that. Here's another example. Now this is a lot of different color. This is, you know, talk about using color as a subject. The subject is obviously these flowers, but the color is so different in all of them that we're really, you know, they're all contrasted with each other. There's a lot of different areas of the color wheel that's being represented here. So this one, and this is not my image, this is something I found, but really good use of that technique. And there's some repeating color. You know, you can see the yellows repeated in a couple of spots. You see that magenta in the foreground flower repeated in the background. The greens are repeated. So it's a, you know, this was a great job of focusing in and eliminating all distracting detail to get this image. Bear with me for a second, guys. Okay. So this was, again, playing with a lot of color. This is similar to the green image as far as how it was done up above. This one, this is shot using a digital projector that's projecting a pattern onto the model, and then the edge lighting, the rim lighting, is keeping her torso from bleeding into the background. but the pattern on her is multicolored, and the overall feel and look of the image is very monochromatic. So it's what makes that that pattern and those colors stand out even more. So this is a couple of quick grab shots on an island with a band playing. Even though we've got a variety of colors in the background, you know, the blue sky, there's some, you know, some people and some other things back there. Primarily, this is very monochromatic because the lights that are on the band, you know, kind of make them look pretty much all one color. Same thing here, same band, different angle, change in the lighting, but all of this blue and magenta look, you know, is what makes the image. If you can envision this being shot in the afternoon with, you know, normal lighting, it's just not going to have the same visual impact that this does. So using complementary colors again, yellows and blues, the yellow just pops off of the background because of the fact that they are opposite of each other on the color wheel. And then the stroke line and even my trademark that's in the, or the copyright that's in the lower left, using that same color to help balance those colors throughout the image and create a little bit of an edge around. So again, this is just recognizing what colors work with each other and how to make something pop a little bit more. And that's really what we're talking about here. So this is an underwater image using the three primary colors. They're each wearing something that's basically red, green, and blue. And then a lot of the pastels and variations of those are thrown into the background. So we've got a lot of different stuff going on here. All of it is color related. On a sunny day, shooting underwater on a sunny day, you're going to get a lot of funky lighting patterns, which I kind of liked in this case. A lot of times I'll wait for some overcast to come in, especially where faces are involved. But in this case, I kind of liked it the way it was, and working with all of that color. Again, if I had a very monochromatic background or a neutral gray background or something behind them, it would have made the colors that they're wearing pop out a little bit more. But there's just something about having all of that color in this image that, to me anyway, it makes color the subject a little more. So there's a few more underwater ones done the same or a similar way, working with a lot of pastels. This one's rotated, actually. Obviously, this is the actual orientation that it's shot at as she's floating back towards the surface. And rotating it this way because of the balloons gives it a little bit of a different look. The ones that are on the surface now almost look like planets. And then she's kind of defying gravity a little bit with the ones that are in her hand. It is really tough, by the way, to get balloons to do this. Like the ones that are on the surface of the water, they have to be about halfway filled with water or a little less than halfway. Otherwise, they're just going to float away, or you know, they won't sink into the water at all. It's really tough. It took a long time to get these balloons, especially the ones in her hands, to get to the point where they would actually try to get back to the surface, but retained a little bit of shape. That was kind of a tough shot. Same, I think it was probably the same day, but just doing a little bit different. Again, playing with the color, the fabric color, repeating that fabric color with that water splash that you see there is actually just a Photoshop brush that's been dipped in yellow. That's all it is, just to repeat that yellow color. And in the background, keeping it pastel, but it's still basically yellow against blue. So that's what makes the colors work on that. This one's a lot more monochromatic because, again, we have what she's wrapped in, and the background is still pretty much all the same color, and that makes her skin tone stand out that much more, especially since the red is a little darker. It's actually a lot darker than the skin. So that's the first thing you see when you look at it, is the skin tone popping out. This is, again, a little more of a subtle use of it, but this is color harmony. Everything in this image that is a dominant color, which is this yellow gold, is repeated everywhere, not just in the costume, but in the bricks and the stone that she's laying on, and the even in the water, the reflections in the water. For the most part, up in the upper part, there's a little bit of a blue reflection from the sky, um, which again, those are contrasting colors. But for the most part, everything here has that warm tone and that warm feel to it. This is color contrast again. So like the blues and yellows we looked at before, this is just using reds and greens. Foreground is green, the reds in the background, just make both of them. And then even if you look at the flowers on the left-hand side, the same thing is repeated there. The flowers are red in all of that greenery. So you have the same thing happening there that we've done with the foreground and the background and with these telephone booths. Here's an example of advertising using strong color. Monochromatic, other than the volume 1, the words volume 1, which are in red, which is still on the warm palette, everything here being yellow is just a very graphic look, and it does tend to make Uma Thurman's skin stand out a little bit more, but it's a kind of an overkill use of color like that. This is one that I really like. This one's not mine. But again, playing the warm against the cool, shooting this at exactly the right time of day to get just enough detail in the foreground and the background and a long enough shutter speed to let the lights down in that valley record. This is just it's a gorgeous shot. And whether or not, I would imagine that the stars are probably natural. I do see a wee little bit of movement to them, a little bit of motion, because they would have been moving. So if this was maybe I don't know, 10-second, 15-second exposure, you would get a little movement in the stars, and it would record all that detail in the foreground and background. But this to me is all about color. It's about mixing the warm and the cool, and that's what makes this shot work. The peacock, same kind of thing. Reds or the yellows, greens, and blues are all harmonious with each other. There is a little bit of color in the background that contrasts with that a little bit. But again, this is all about color. This is, you know, without in black and white, this isn't nearly as effective. So we talked about clothing on people. Same idea. We always tell people that, you know, there should only be one dominant color in clothing. Everything else should be neutral. So even though the khakis have a little bit of a color cast to them, I would have probably preferred something else there. They're not bad. They're fairly neutral. And, you know, the whites, obviously in the clothing and in the background are neutral. We have more color in the image because of the green grass and all of that. But I guess the khakis, you could say, balance in the color family against the building, you know, the mansion in the background too. But a single color, dominant color in clothing is generally going to be best for something like this. Same idea here. This is a composite shot of a board of directors. And we basically told them stick with a dominant color, which they went with blue. Everything else is relatively neutral. There's some variation in color in the ties and things like that, but still, when you kind of step back and look at this image, it's really the blue that stands out, and it's what you see. An idea of some bold color, and again, color contrast. The green dress is kind of played against the warm and the reds in the background because they're opposite colors. This is at Caesar's Palace. Well, yeah, it says Caesar's Palace here. I didn't realize you could see that. Shot with a wide angle lens to accentuate the model and also even the pose. But it's all about the color in this one. Again, if I shoot this in the middle of the day without any of the lights on, it's nowhere near as interesting as this image is. There's the other color wheel. So this is some this is some color harmony here. It's almost a little bit monochromatic, obviously. You know, she's wearing a neutral color, and we do have the skin tone, but everything else in the image is, you know, warm. reds and yellows, both on the same color palette, done intentionally. And then it's actually gelled. The kicker lights that are in the back corners that are lighting her from the edge of that background, one is gelled red and one is gelled yellow, because I knew we were going to be using fire. You can see it on her arm. You can see it in her hair, one side being yellow, one side having a little bit of red to it. But I knew we were going to use fire in this image, so that's why it was lit that way. And this is the same, it was actually the same session, but using a bit of an opposite effect, doing warm against cool. So the background and a lot of the main lighting is the warmer stuff, and then there's just this look of this globe that she's holding being on the cool side and casting the blue light on her. And it's actually done with a gel, because what she's actually holding is actually just a little mirror ball, and there is no light source there. It wasn't lit up at all. That was added later, but I knew what I was going to do with it. So she's gelled with a blue gel from low off of that side to mimic what it would look like if she was holding something that actually was a light source. Color harmony again, but again, it's that blue and then the warm tones of the skin that make the skin pop out. It's not just that it's blue, it's very dark. The lighting doesn't let the costume fade too much into the background because of the edge lighting, but you cannot help but see skin tone in this, because not only of the difference in contrast, but also the the fact that the warm skin tones are played against the cool colors in the background. And then this is one that I found, somebody had done something, I think, was it this class that did something with pencils along these lines? But this is just kind of a similar idea, using color, and also using the focal point. Obviously that yellow pencil is pulled a little bit forward, and that's where the point of focus is, so that the pencils coming forward towards the camera are out of focus. The ones behind it are out of focus. That's the one that's sharp. But it really, in this case, is all about the color. And again, because it's on a black background, a very neutral background, it makes that color pop even more. All right, let me close that. So you get the idea, I think, that we have three different but related ways to use color. One would be very contrasty, with opposite colors. One would be harmony, using colors that are all in the same palette, warm or cool. And then there's one that's monochromatic, which typically uses just one color. So the assignment that you're going to have for next week is going to be to create at least two of those scenarios. And what I'm looking for is the color harmony and the color contrast. So those are the opposites. So the contrast is going to be, blues and yellows, reds and greens, whatever, to contrast the color of the subject with whatever the background is. And then the other one is to create something that has a lot of harmony in the color palette that you're using, so that it doesn't have to be a single color, but they should all be roughly in the same palette. So class is probably going to be a little shorter today, obviously, but we're going to go ahead and take a little break here for 10 minutes or so. Just a couple of things I want to show you when we come back, and then we'll let you guys get out a little bit early, because if you haven't voted yet, you want to go do that. All right, so let's say it's what, 5:06 and a half. Let's hit back. Let's come back at 5:15, and we'll probably be done by 5:30. That sounds good to you. All right, we'll see you in a few minutes, guys. Okay, so we will really just going to look at one more thing here. But before we do, let me ask you guys again. I'll post all of this later, but I want to make sure that the concept that we're talking about here is pretty basic. But I want to make sure that we all understand the three. So the three variations of color, like I said, are color harmony, color contrast, and monochromatic. And for the assignment, I'd like you to create at least two of those. And it's probably going to be the color contrast and the color harmony. Those will be the two easiest to do. Monochromatic might be a little tougher. But if you do any two of them, that's great. If you do all three, a little bonus, if you can get all three of those in. Um, and Chris, I know with the travel stuff that you've got, I guarantee you could go through and find right off the bat all three of those. But and if you have them, great. I'd love to see them. But I still would like you to shoot at least one of them new, for the class. So I'm gonna, I had mentioned this is sort of an offhand thing as we went through, and I looked at that one shot. It reminded me of those milk shots, and so they don't directly tie in to the topic today, but they kind of do because some of them use some very bold color in addition to the technique, and then other ones use a very monochromatic grayscale kind of look. So I'm going to show those to you just because I think when I see something that is so well done, um, even if sometimes I can figure out how it was done, sometimes I can't. But I just think it bears looking at because they're just so really cool. So these are the examples that I was talking about. So this one uses some really bold color, you'll see. And I actually read um, the technical data on how this was done, and it really does involve dozens and dozens of shots of this model being doused with milk. They really actually just threw milk at her over and over and over again and created the clothing because she's nude. All of the models in this are nude. And just threw milk at them and splashed it in as many different ways as possible, and then layered and composited those together until they came up with the final image. And this one, like I said, does use that very bold color. This one's a little more neutral in look, except for, again, the shoes and the bike. And it's no accident that, they use the colors that they did to contrast them a little bit. I think it was kind of interesting that they made a backless dress out of milk. Like that's kind of, I'm not sure I would have thought to do that. That's just pretty creative. Here's a couple, same thing, backless on one side. Um, and if you think about it, they would have to have remained pretty still throughout, all or most of this in order for this to work for dozens and dozens of exposures. I'm not sure how they did some of them, to be quite honest, as far as that's concerned. And obviously the base of this, like you do one shot on seamless or whatever it is that they're shooting this on, and your floor is ruined. So um, that was probably done first. I love the ironing board. I love the waterfall effect coming off of that ironing board. I think that's just so creative. Couple different looks here. I like the dress that's created in both of these. The one on the right sort of looks like it's being fanned by wind, but again, the colors are more pastel, but they are very bold. And the one on the right is again using the reds to offset against the green in that background. And the fact that the model has red hair also works pretty well with this. This one's my favorite. Man, what an incredible job of creating this Marilyn Monroe effect. I mean, that's just, I can't even imagine what it would have taken, how many attempts it would have taken to come up with that. And everything about this just works, from the motion in her hair, the motion in the broom, the pose, the expression, everything about this just works really well. A couple more that use really bold color. the red again, and you know, the lipstick with the colors in the background either blend or pop off because they're in contrast to that. But just really cool ideas behind that. Now, these are the more monochromatic ones. These are actually a little more ambitious, I think, in looking at them. I don't believe they're done by the same person. I think that the first ones we looked at were the originals, and somebody looked at that and thought, I can improve on that. And they did these. And I really do think they kind of improved in some ways. The lighting on these is impeccable, just absolutely gorgeous lighting. And the clothing that they were able to create out of, you know, this actually looks like it's swirled around her. That's just, I wish I had bigger versions of them, guys, but that's as big as they're going to get. And then again, having the look of the windblown dress with the windblown hair. And then again, lighting is just absolutely incredible. Soft directional lighting with separation lighting coming from the back corner. And then this one's really cool as well, using the harp as a prop. The splashes that you see on the floor there. Again, wish I could increase the size and show you these a little bit larger, but that's pretty much all we've got. So those are pretty cool, pretty unique, ambitious. I think I could probably shoot for months and never duplicate that effect that well. But it was funny in pulling those up and finding them. I recognized how much color played a part in those as well, either the bold color or the lack of color, because that can be a thing too. So just so you know, a black and white image doesn't really qualify for what we're looking for. We do want it to be color. Even a monochromatic should be a color, not a black and white. It can be neutral, but it should be a color image, not a black and white image, is what we're looking for the assignment coming up. Does anybody have any questions about, you know, the stuff that we covered? Like I said, the concepts are pretty simple, but we'll have this this class did record. Once it processes, I'll post that. So if you want to go back and look at the examples again, rather than me upload all those images into Sakai, you can just pull up the video and scrub forward until you find that part. So all the examples will be there. If you have any questions between now and next week, as far as you know, the color is concerned, just let me know. As always, do we have any comments, questions, or concerns at this point? It's so depressing. I went to take a break and it's like dark. Like, I hate this. I hate it. Oh my God, we've got another 6 weeks before the days start to get longer again. Oh well, we'll get through it somehow. This year will come to a close, and hopefully 2021 is going to be a whole lot better for everybody. So hang in there, guys. We'll get through it. So we're going to let you go early this week because it's election day. We'll call it that. Well, I know everybody's anxious to get to the TV and watch the results, right? Yeah. I probably will, but that's because I'm old and boring. All right, guys. So we'll see you in a week. If you have any questions in the meantime, just let me know. Later.